So when you see them, for example, giving solidarity to movements like Hezbollah, to movements like Hamas, this gives you an insight. What type of person would join forces with a movement that wants to achieve subjugation, destruction, and who wants to actually keep these people poor, who wants to keep these people from making the most of their lives? So anti-1%, anti-capitalism, a language that talks about affordability without anything that describes to us how we can get, of course, to affordability and progress, and to put all this together, hatred for Israel. And their goal is not more prosperity, their goal is not more justice or whatever else they claim to be. Their goal is just, they see those who have achieved and they say, I want to tear this down.
To understand this new dangerous ideological movement that blends socialism, populism, and open hostility towards Jews in Israel, and that could fundamentally reshape the country, I want to welcome back to the show my guest, Dr. Nikos Sotirakopoulos. He's a political scholar and author who studied these patterns and lived through his own ideological transformation from anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism to becoming a defender of Israel and Western values. Nikos, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be back. Thank you.
It seems figures like Zohar Mamdani, the mayor of New York, and the growing influence of the Democratic Socialists of America, it seems that the stakes are no longer theoretical. Are we repeating the early warning signs of movements that in the past, like the Bolshevik Revolution, ended in repression, economic collapse, and the loss of freedom?
So let's make sure that we are clear what we're dealing here. So these people are not the Bolsheviks. So the Bolsheviks had a clear program. They had clear ideological leadership by Lenin. These people are different. These people, I would say, it would give them a compliment if you call them Bolsheviks, although the Bolsheviks were horrible people, because I'm not even sure that these people are motivated by a positive. If you ask, for example, the democratic socialists or the Mamdanis or the Hassan Pikers of this world, what do you want to achieve? It's very unclear to me whether they have a clear program of what they are for. What is clear is what they are against, what they want to tear down, what they want to destroy. And they want to destroy, and this is no secret, capitalism, but it goes beyond capitalism. It's not even that innocent. They actually are very uncomfortable with what me and you would understand as the West, a society where we live in order to be free to pursue our happiness, to create, to produce. These are the pillars of, these are the intellectual things that they are against. And so don't confuse them with the socialists who at least promised to people that we want to achieve abundance, we want to achieve greatness, to conquer space, to build skyscrapers and things like that. They are not even pretending to be towards something positive. This is why what you get from them is mostly a negative, a will to tear down.
And so they want to tear down Western society. When you use the term capitalism, I think there's a big problem because people don't know what capitalism is. From my perspective, it'd be much better to call it freedom, the freedom of choice. How do you define capitalism and why is it so important for our survival?
Yes, fundamentally, I agree. Capitalism, it's in people's mind, it's this, big corporations. No, capitalism is something very simple. You are free to live your life as you wish. You are free to produce. You are free to own your property. And again, these are the things that they are so uncomfortable with. And notice, what are the types of regimes and what are the types of movements that they feel comfortable with? So when you see them, for example, giving solidarity to movements like Hezbollah, to movements like Hamas, this gives you an insight. What type of person would join forces with a movement that wants to achieve subjugation, destruction, and who wants to actually keep these people poor, who wants to keep these people from making the most of their lives? So again, I don't even give them the benefit of the doubt to tell them, oh, you are a socialist. You just are trying to find a different way, let's say, towards prosperity or towards progress. They're not even this. This is why I think at the end of the day, they're nihilists, which means they stand for nothing. They want to tear down. And their number one enemy is what you mentioned. It's the idea that we are free to pursue our own lives, to pursue our own goals. These people do not like that. They do not like you being free to do as you wish with your life. They want them to tell you what you should live for and what you should work for.
Yeah, but the danger seems to be, and you mentioned this in an interview, in a video recently, the danger seems to be that this new left, which is run by Mamdani, which is run by AOC and Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Socialist America, they're going to dress this up in a language which is very powerful right now. And if you look at what's happening here in America on the ground, almost city by city, they're going left wing, they're going Democratic Socialist America. The DSA has a tremendous ground game. They are bringing in people from all around the country in places like New York to go door to door to convince people to vote for their radical people that are running for positions. But you mentioned in one of your videos that this new left, the Mamdani wing of the Democratic Party, is going to dress it up in different ways. And there are several points you brought up. One is that it will look like the Donald Trump's popularism. They're going to talk about affordability, for example. They're going to realize that they've made mistakes. They cannot get powerful in America without reducing their constant battling against environmentalism in the public. But it's also going to be mixed with virulent anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. Tell us about these pillars of how the new Democratic left is going to try to take over the United States.
So let's think about this. What would you do if you were a clever leftist? You would already have realized that wokeness, or woke madness, or these things with the pronouns, this will not take you far. People are not going to go to the barricades for these ideologies, an ideology that is alien to most people, to everyday people, to people who work, to people who want to do something with their lives. So the clever leftists are noticing that woke is not going to take them that far. They're also noticing something else. They're noticing that what sells today is this populist agenda that is also dominating the right. This idea that the conflict is between the elites and the people. The conflict is between some cabal that controls the world and has the power and everyday people who are the victims of this cabal. So prepare yourselves for a populist leftist. Now, when you are a populist of the left, the enemy is very clear. It's the 1%. It's the capitalists. It is the great producers. And also there's one more enemy, because with your leftist agenda, it will only get you that far. But what if you manage to also get the worst people from the other side, the worst people of the right, the worst people of the populist right? And what is the thing that unites the worst people of the left and the worst people of the right? It is this anti-populist agenda. It is this anti-Israel agenda. It is targeting Israel as the big devil, as the thing that we all know we are against. This is why you can see this otherwise weird thing where you have the worst people from the left and the worst people from the right happily discussing with each other. They invite themselves to each other podcasts. You see, let's say, Tucker Carlson inviting Kasparian and people from the Young Turks having discussions with the worst people from the populist left. And again, why? Because they can find one common ground. And this common ground is we might disagree on many things, but we all hate Israel. So hatred of Israel becomes this focal point where the worst powers, the worst people from across the political spectrum are meeting. And this is the key sauce, the secret sauce, the key ingredient that I think will seal this new coalition. Populism, anti-1%, anti-capitalism, a language that talks about affordability without anything that describes to us how we can get, of course, to affordability and progress, and to put all this together, hatred for Israel. I don't know if it's anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism. To be honest with you, I don't care. Their motivation is the same. They hate Israel for everything that is good about Israel, that it is a Western country, that it is a country with some degree of freedom, some degree of capitalism, and this is why they hate it. And this is why anti-Israel is the glue that puts these wars of the people of both sides together.
And it seems to be it's working. And this really exploded on October 7th, because on October 8th is when we saw that red-green alliance exploding on American college campuses. You've been seeing this in Europe for many years. We saw it on Harvard, we saw it at Columbia University, where the LGBTQ, the feminist movement, and others were getting together with the Hamas members of their society on the campuses, demonstrating together. How do you explain a union between this red-green alliance that brings together people that really, you see, the Islamists, let's go back to Iran, for example. In 1979, it wasn't just the Islamists that took over. They were working hand in hand with the communists. And many people, including Glenn Beck and others, have pointed out, once the revolution was over in Iran, then the Islamists started attacking the communists and destroying them. So we're seeing something right now. We're seeing that union again between these two powerful forces, which I think helps us understand what's really happening today politically. And Israel really is the focal point between both of them.
And I would say that leftists today are much more morally culpable from the leftists in Iran in 1979, because the leftists in Iran in 1979, they could claim we didn't know any better. They made the revolution. They were a big part of the revolution. Actually, the reason why the Islamists rushed to take over the American embassy and to keep hostages the personnel of the embassy is because they wanted to outflank the Iranian left. They wanted to show the people, we are the real anti-imperialists, therefore you don't need anymore the leftists. The leftists are obsolete now from our movement. But you would expect that all these decades later, the left would have taken the message. They would have learned the lesson, but they haven't. And this gives us a very important insight, this coalition that you described between, on the one hand, the Islamists and on the other hand, supposed progressives. It shows to us that these supposed progressives do not care an iota about all these groups they supposedly care about. They don't care about women. They do not care about the LGBT people. They do not care about minorities. They do not care about secularism. The regimes that they defend have all the characteristics that they claim they hate. They are regimes that are authoritarian. They are regimes that are institutionally sexist, institutionally misogynistic, institutionally homophobic. And yet they side with these regimes. What does this show you? It shows you who they truly are. They do not care about these groups. They do not care about empowering women. They do not care about empowering LGBT people. I care about these things, and this is why I despise the regime in Iran, and this is why I despise these regimes that are at war with Israel. They do not care about these regimes. So the good thing is that the mask has slipped. These people can never again bamboozle us that they are progressive, that they are sensitive, that they have any moral high ground.
There's a verse in the Bible, the Torah, that reads, "You shall carefully guard your lives. V'nishmartem ma'od l'nafshosechem." Most people think this is just about avoiding obvious dangers, but it's more than that. Your health, your well-being, your future, it's your responsibility. And to guard that properly, you have to plan ahead. When it comes to Medicare, that isn't easy, and I know a lot about this. There are thousands of different Medicare options, and it's extremely difficult to know which one is best for you. Most people only see a handful of options, and many pick plans based on low premiums that don't provide the care that they will eventually need. That is why if you're unsure what Medicare is best for your individual needs, you should speak with someone who can help you choose wisely. My personal advice is to speak with Chapter. Chapter is the only advisor that compares every single Medicare plan nationwide. They search for plans that fit your doctors, your medications, and your life. They help you find the coverage that actually fits. Their help is totally free, and their advice is truly unbiased. Give them a call today at 877-907-4755. Again, that's 877-907-4755, or go to askchapter.org/rabbi. Well, we have the example of what happened in Iran. Look at the terror, 47 years of terror, hundreds of thousands of people murdered, women having acid thrown on their faces, lack of human rights, anti-Semitism. Look at the exporting of violence from the Iranian mullahs around the Middle East and throughout the world, which actually reached South America. There was a bombing in Argentina in the 90s as well. So we see the exporting of violence, of hatred, of murder against their own people. But we also see that the Bolsheviks ultimately, whereby they initially said we're fighting for the people, ended up murdering 21 million people during the reign of the terror of the Soviet Union. So talk about that for a minute. What really happens when they get their way, when the Mamdanis win, when the AOCs win, when the Bernie Sanders wins, and they've been talking about, rising up the workers of America. What really happens to the workers of America? What happens to the real people after these guys start winning?
I don't know. I don't expect that we're going to have what we had in Soviet Union, because back then you have also different type of people with different type of commitment. I don't think these people are committed enough to go out in the barricades for their ideas, but that's for another discussion. But you mentioned the workers, right? What would these people ever do about the workers? If they cared one iota about the poor and about the workers, the first thing they would have to do, they would try to understand what makes workers richer, what makes worker more productive, because this is how work becomes more valuable, which means this is how the worker becomes actually richer. But they do not care. I mean, let me give you an example. If you claim I care about my kid, for example, the first thing you do is you try to realize, how can I make sure that how does this kid become an adult? How do they flourish in this life? And history has shown that there is one way for the poor to become richer, for the workers to become richer and to live a comfortable life. And this is the process that has happened in the West in the last 200 years. It has been the most brilliant season, the most brilliant period in the history of humanity. And what has the left done while they saw this great transformation? They've seen it and they try to fight it. They try to find the number one means that humanity has had to go literally from the mud and huts in the mud to the skyscrapers. They try to fight it. And they try to fight it to bring forward what exactly? This is what they've never explained to us. You want to substitute capitalism for what? And the answer is they have no answer, because they have no positive vision. You mentioned the term democratic socialism. Can someone please explain to me what is democratic socialism? How can socialism ever be democratic? I mean, if you and me, we work in let's say in a factory, and I want to produce microchips, and you want to produce steel girders. How can we decide what we will produce? Someone will have to force me to abide by your vision. Or let's say we own a farm and I want to produce apples, you want to produce potatoes. What does democratic socialism mean? It means like, what exactly? Where have they seen this actually work? Where have they seen this actually operate? And they want to substitute the best system that humanity has till now ever seen. They want to substitute it with what? With nothing, with an unknown. And again, you understand why this doesn't matter to them, the fact that they haven't got an alternative, if you understand what their goal is. And their goal is not more prosperity, their goal is not more justice or whatever else they claim to be. Their goal is just, they see those who have achieved and they say, I want to tear this down. Notice the language they use, for example. They should not be billionaires. Why exactly? Who is a billionaire? A billionaire is someone who has produced that much that so many people have found value in what they produce and they want to have it. They want to trade with it. And they see this spectacle and they find something bad at it. They go, no, we need to tear these people down. So again, I'm not buying that these people are idealists, that these people are compassionate or anything. No, these people, as far as I know, they are nihilist. And again, see what type of regimes and what types of societies inspire them and ask yourself who, rather than a nihilist, would be inspired by these type of regimes and these type of societies.
Well, it's a very good point. I think the way to deal with the left is to bring facts. And Mamdani is fighting facts right now. I'll give you some examples of what he did. During his campaign, which started about a year ago, he was campaigning for affordability. He was campaigning for the workers, for the lower middle class, the middle class, and the poor of New York City. He promised them free buses. He promised them freezing their rent. He promised them free grocery stores. Within the first few months of administration, he reneged on his promises for buses because it's not practical. He realized he can't do what he wanted to do. He then said he's going to raise, so he couldn't get the state of New York to raise taxes on all the rich, which he said he was going to do. So instead, he pivoted towards raising property taxes in New York up to 10%. That affected mostly middle class and lower income African Americans and Hispanic Americans in New York City, because their properties, which are worth maybe a few $100,000, maybe $500,000-$600,000 right now, would be taxed to a limit they can't even handle anymore. And therefore, he started attacking not the 1%. He started going after the top 25%, the top 30%. So the people he promised the most to, he lied to the most. But I'm wondering, why is he doing that? I think the reason he's doing that, he just wants power. So he sells this utilitarian, this universal vision, almost a messianic vision, where there'll be no more conflict in the world, everything will be paid for. The minute he gets into power, he realizes he can't even accomplish what he wants to do.
Well, this is, Daniel, this is the problem with egalitarianism. There is always someone who is slightly poorer than you. So if you are, let's say, in the top 20, the top 75%, you'd say, oh, my enemy is the 1%. But if you're at the bottom, someone who is at the 75%, he's rich compared to you. So many people sneakily think that, oh, I can vote for someone like Mamdani because he's going to take stuff from those who are above me and give it to me. But they don't realize that there are always people who are looking to what you have and they want what you have. This is the poison of envy. The poison of envy sees the world as a zero-sum game. What you have, you've taken it from me. What you have is kept away from me. They do not understand production. They do not understand that it's the human mind that creates stuff and makes the pie grow longer and longer and longer. And no surprise about that. These people have never, ever understood what is the key of wealth, what is the key of production, which is, again, the human mind that needs to be free to think, free to experiment, free to fail, and free to produce, free to trade. Again, history has given a definite answer. This is the one and only way you can reduce poverty. This is the best pill, the magic pill you have that has lifted billions and billions of people out of poverty. So again, if they cared about poverty, they would not be talking about rent controls and things like that. They would say, more power to the producer of this world. And by power, I mean, leave them alone. Let them cook. Make New York again the hub of the best creators. Make the best minds go to New York and make it again like the center of the world, as it was after the Industrial Revolution, at the most brilliant era the United States have known. But again, that's not their vision, because their goal is not more wealth, more prosperity, more opportunity. Their goal is tearing down. The goal is to take from one group and give to the other, until the point where everyone is poor, and then we'll have run out of victims and there will be no one else to take from.
I think what you're saying is that we look at the experiment of the United States over the last 200 years. It has created the most freedom, the most wealth, the most rising of economic levels from people that were poor or immigrants came here to make a lot of money. I juxtapose that what's happening in Europe, for example. Juxtapose that, in fact, what happened to the Soviet Union. And it's amazing to me at people like Hassan Piker, who are representing this new young generation, that are drawn to the nostalgia of the Soviet Union that murdered 21 million people, that created the greatest poverty in human history in the former Soviet Union. Where in America, you have this great example. Perhaps it's not perfect, but by far, it's risen America up to a level standard of living that no one in the world actually has. So why do you think people like Hassan Piker and this new generation are so drawn to the nostalgia of the Soviet Union, where America has provided the answers to most problems in human history?
You said something important, by the way, right? That we should also understand where America has failed. The obvious example is, for example, how it was so unjust and so oppressive to Black people for decades and centuries. But at least the spirit of this country was that this was such a contradiction that had to be solved, and it took a civil war to solve it. But rather than that, indeed, at least the United States was motivated by this vision of freedom. What were the regimes that the Hassan Piker of this world were motivated about? So the short answer is that the reason why Hassan Piker and those like him hate America and are nostalgic about the Soviet Union is because, again, they hate the West. They hate liberal society and they hate the ideas that give rise to liberal society. Well, who was the West's most formidable enemy? It was the Soviet Union. And notice how they don't have a problem to side with the latest enemies of the West, which is radical Islam. But you see, radical Islam comes with some baggage, the oppression of women, persecuting minorities, and all that stuff. But the cool kids of the left, like Hassan Piker, they need to find something cooler than that. They're like these guys who say, I found the early hits of the band before it was cool. And the before it was cool in Western hatred was Soviet Union, the archetypal enemy of the West. Because there was once, not so long ago, a whole empire, the Soviet Union, whose explicit goal was to bury liberal capitalism and to bury everything it stood for. And this empire was not this turban-wearing, alcohol-banning culture, which is Islam. It was more in a way like us, like the cool liberal kids in the West. So it is a great opportunity for people like Piker to create this mythology of a lost chance to destroy capitalism. And this is how Soviet nostalgia becomes this, this symbol of anti-imperialist cool, radical chic, as some people have explained it. And the Soviet Union offers them this fantasy, because it was always a fantasy, never a reality, of this scientific modern society that almost worked. And well, sure, it murdered some tens of millions of people, but we can dismiss this. We can say this was Western propaganda. So that's what they find appealing, this fantasy of an anti-Western alternative. And an alternative which is far more, let's say, emotionally satisfying for them than waving the flag of Hamas or other medieval theocracies. So that's why Soviet nostalgia has a lot of potential for Hassan Piker and the likes of him.
And I think people like Javier Milei in Argentina are showing the exact opposite. He's coming after 50, 60 years of socialism, massive uninflation, massive unemployment, farly degraded medical system in Argentina, low access to physicians, low access to medical care, and these are things which I think prove the fact that those who've been through it already are showing us that we have to get out of it now before it's too late. It seems like America is drifting because of the democratic socialist America to what Argentina was just a few years ago, to what Venezuela turned into. Now, I know you say that you don't think it's a full Bolshevik revolution. It's kind of more like a creeping revolution from my perspective, with a smile. So my final question to you is, what are we going to do about it? What is the way out of this? What are some steps that people could take to make sure that these ideas of the Hassan Pikers and the Bernie Sanders and the AOCs that are so popular today, at least in the mainstream media, how do we bury these ideas into the dustbin of history?
But I want to push back a bit, Daniel, because there's one thing that, and also relates to the answer that you asked, the question that you asked. It is not just because of these people that we are losing, that we who appreciate freedom are losing. I think it's also because we are making a big mistake. And you mentioned Milei, and Milei, I think, shows us the way, because Milei defends freedom not just on economic grounds. He doesn't enter into this argument, if you lower taxes by 5%, GDP is going to go up 6%. No, he makes an enthusiastic moral case for freedom. And this is what we are lacking, right? The other side, the left, the AOC, the Hassan Pikers, why do they attract young people? Well, many of them are ignorant, sure, but they see someone with enthusiasm. Where is the enthusiasm on our side? How often do you see conservatives defending freedom with fervor? Usually they defend freedom almost with guilt, like, yeah, we need a bit of freedom, but also then we need the controls and things like that. No, we have to be idealists for freedom. We need to understand that freedom is not a luxury. Freedom is an existential necessity. We need freedom as much as we need to breathe if we are to live a life to its full potential. So how do we fight the left? Two things. First, we expose them for what they are. We expose them that your ideas lead, so you're not misguided good people. Your ideas are horrible. It's not that the left is good in theory, but their ideas don't work in practice. Their ideas are horrible in theory because they advocate for horrible ideas. Egalitarianism is a horrible idea. This idea that we should all have not the same rights, I'm all in favor. I go to the barricades for equality of rights, but they want equality of results. And the only way you can achieve this is if you drag down the best of us, the most productive ones. If I want to become equal with Messi, with Lionel Messi, I have to break Messi's legs. This is the only path to equality. So first, we have to attack the left on the moral level to tell them your morality sucks. Your morality is a horrible, inhuman morality. And the second thing, we need not just to be against the left. We need to have our own positive vision that with freedom, sky's the limit. We can achieve, fast trains, faster airplanes, miracles in medicine. We could live much, much, much longer. We can all be much, much richer. Life can be so much better. And it is this positive vision that we are missing. Luckily, the left is also missing it. So the road is open for us to make this case for freedom, to make this case for optimism, for a wonderful future. And I'm sure many people will be excited. People are starving for a positive alternative and a positive vision.
And I think what you're saying is brilliant. And we have to sell more freedom, and we want to make people the best they can actually become. That is the selling point of enthusiasm. Nikos, your work is tremendous. You've been doing this for several years. I think you're fighting an uphill battle against Western civilization and socialism today. How do people follow your work and learn more?
Thank you. I appreciate what you say, Daniel. So the easiest way to follow my work is follow me on Twitter. You're going to find me easy, Nikos_17. And on YouTube, my channel, Nikos Sotirakopoulos. Also, a very easy my business card is at nikos.org, nikos.org. There you can find my work, where to start with if you are new to my work, and ways to support me and join my community. So, and thank you very much for having me again in your show. I have to say, since last time, I reread Mann's Search for Meaning, and it was I enjoyed it even more than the first time.
Well, I think what you'll find in there is that the human spirit gets better when he operates with responsibility and has a positive vision of the future. And I think the left is going in the opposite direction. And I think that's where we're at today in the world. But I just want to thank you for your work. And I want to recommend Nikos's work, because every single time, Nikos, I watch your videos, I'm smarter, I'm more informed, and I'm feeling more free and more optimistic. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for your words. Thanks a lot.